So let's talk about, well, what is the spiritual teaching? How would we do that? And let's see if we can take, I have a DVD here which has a whole workshop on the spiritual teaching. The first half of the DVD is a lecture in the Meier case. I did it years ago. Second half is a full-on, step-by-step means of doing this thing. I called it, when I created this process in 1990, I called it Standing in Spirit because it happened to me while I was standing. A quick story just so you understand. So I was taking Qigong classes at that time, and we were just stand for long periods of time like this, eyes closed. And I had just had a little breakup with somebody in my life, and I had a big knot about the size of Texas in my stomach here. And so I was standing in the garden, and I was learning from a little Chinese guy who didn't speak much English, and suddenly I'm drawn to this, and I kind of get like a little intuition of, well, ask your spirit to show you the core of the pattern. I didn't know what that came. Oh, yeah, fine, that's good. So for the next 15 minutes or so, I'm reliving my relationship, not with the girlfriend, not with my mother or my sister, with my father. This crazy thing of all of this emotionality stuff. And heat is just radiating out. My eyes are closed. I'm seeing red. Do you ever hear that term? I'm really seeing red now. I was really understanding violent rage without any external evidence. Stuff is just blue. Suddenly, after about 15 minutes, I'm still there and going, what difference did that make? And then I hear, think about your father again. I went, oh yeah, that was my dad. He did the best he could. What's the big deal? I went, what? And I'm kind of going, why did that suddenly lift? Where'd they go? And then, now think about her again. I'm going, yeah, Jan, nice girl. Why aren't I feeling hurt? So for the next couple of weeks, literally, I'd come to class. I knew I couldn't even begin to try and explain this to my Chinese friend. And I would try to find something to provoke myself, an emotional thing. Because I would not only get images and thoughts, but the feelings, I could also identify where they were in my body. And by not doing anything forcefully, through observation and just breathing normally, no fancy, nothing crazy, I would breath in, breath out. Take in the image, take in the thing, really let it go, in and out. These things would dissipate. And then I would look around, where'd they go? And then I saw, well, wait a minute, how do I know if I'm really done with this issue? Okay, I'm going to bring up that thing I was thinking about in the beginning and really try to crank it. So when I couldn't provoke anymore, when I couldn't reinitiate the trauma, the feeling, the issue, I would go, well, I think we're pretty well through that. But I also knew, and it turned out to be true, that you can feel like you're really clear of something until one day you're walking around and somebody does something and re-stimulates, or something pops up from within you. So then, how do you deal with that? And then I figured out, here's how you deal with it. If something happens and you re-stimulated a pattern, an issue you had, and you don't know what to do, the first thing is just be conscious that it's going on, even if you're in automatic, doing the same thing you usually do, such as hitting yourself on the head with some imaginary item or whatever. Just know you're doing yourself, okay, this is what's happening, I can't do anything. The second thing is do anything but what you usually do. Start singing, dancing around, whatever. The third thing is you choose how you will react, if you're going to react, right? You choose how you will deal with this thing that has reappeared. You've already processed, so you're not in so much fear, but you're a little in dread that it's back. But there's a mechanism now by which you can further dissipate the charge. We don't necessarily get rid of everything in our lives that are issues. We can bring them way down on that scale. Like, in a sound studio, you bring down those faders and all. You keep it really below the level where it can even if your subconscious mind has got a little bit of it, it's not going to do anything to you. Yeah, that's what we all have, subconscious minds. So what I'm going to do right now is you don't have to move or anything else, you just sit there. And what I'm going to suggest is we try this in the privacy of your own consciousness. When I do this with groups in a more full-on manner where we, let's say, spend more time or whatever, I never ask people to tell anybody what their issue is, what they're going through. I just give you some steps, and we just offer them out that you can play with them in this time to try to work out, test something. So I will ask certain questions, such as, Has everybody got this? Are you doing that? Whatever. So raise your hand if you can think of something in your own life that's still a little problematic that you'd like to clarify more for yourself. Anybody have that? I should have said anybody don't have it. Good. That's all. We all have it. Let's face it. And it can be a larger or smaller thing, whatever. What we're going to do in a moment. Now, it's called standing in spirit because the way I usually teach it is standing. I'm not going to ask you to do that. You can do this standing, but you can do it sitting, and you can even do it lying down. The reason I've found that the standing worked very well after, it had happened to me that way, but someone said to me, you should call it standing in spirit. I said, great name, we'll use it. Then I realized the metaphors. You're no longer standing for certain things. You're standing up for yourself. You're taking a stance. You've got understanding. And now you are supporting yourself solely on two soles of your feet. You're not lying back in some cushy thing. You're not in a pool floating around with people yama doing stuff and waving incense. You're just nakedly available to yourself, but you can do it sitting. So that's how we're going to do it. So here's the thing I'm going to suggest. Make sure you have a little room that you feel comfortable enough. If you feel you want to take another chair, that's fine. No one will be offended. And if they are, we'll ask them to work on it. But what you're going to do in a moment, I'm going to say to you, look, I'd like you to, if you feel comfortable, close your eyes so you have the privacy of your own space and your own consciousness, and just bring something. You can start now with this as you hear this. Find something you want to work on a little bit that's been a little bit of an obstacle or an issue, large or small. Just find it. Now, when you identify it, I want you to be like a good reporter for a newspaper or a TV reporter. I want you to pay attention to how you know this is an issue of importance to you. And by that I mean, I want you to allow yourself to become aware of any and all of the context. That means the memories connected to this, the faces, the sounds, if you smell or hear things internally, and especially any feelings in or around your body that you have when you think about this. I don't want you to try and change it or resist anything. I want you to note so that you have a good sense, because we're going to return to this context to test it out in a few minutes. So when you have a sense for yourself of what you want to work on now, and take a little time if you need it, then, and only then, just open your eyes, and we'll go to the next step. And there's no rush. If you need more time, just raise your hand so I don't roll over you here. Or raise your hand if you've got the idea of what you want to work on. Whatever issue it is for you. Okay. And again, you're not going to say this to anybody. It's not what it's about. Now, in a moment, I'm going to have you close your eyes again. But for right now, I'm just going to tell you what we're going to do so you know. We're going to have you bring that whole thing back into your conscious awareness. And there's some things I'm going to ask you to not do, and then I'll drop the other shoe. I don't want you to resist, deny, negotiate, justify, explain to yourself. I don't want you to do those numbers on yourself when you're aware of whatever you want to work with. However, because we're human beings, we sometimes do those things anyhow. Should you find that while you're trying, quote unquote, to work on this thing, this other element of denial, resistance, whatever comes up, then you can shift your attention to that and process that. You'll understand more what I mean as you do this. So, are we kind of ready to begin? Now, what I'm going to do is you'll hear me talk occasionally, but it's not all that important. It's more about I'm suggesting focus or whatever. I'm just trying to also keep you here so you don't, in present for this, so you're not drifting off and forgetting what you want to do. So I suggest just gently close your eyes and take a little time now to recreate that issue for yourself. I suggest letting your hands rest gently in your lap or by your sides, uncrossed legs if you're comfortable enough, so that you're just fully open to yourself. Feet could rest on the floor or not, whatever you want. Fold your hands together, leave them open. Just be comfortable. Now, Bring that issue up. And please keep your breath going naturally in and out. Don't hold your breath. And I want you to be willing to receive the moment, that is what you are aware of, and that could be anything or nothing even, it's okay. On the inhales, receive it. On the exhale, just be willing, let it go. And if it comes back on the next inhale, so be it. But your process, your job right now, is to be breath in and breath out without defending or resisting, noticing where in your body your attention may be drawn by this issue or situation. You are just wanting to see it for what it is now. You are simply being 100% self-responsible and willing to see things as they are within you. Breath in and breath out. If you notice a particular concentration of energy, also known as feeling, sensation, connected to this issue anywhere in your body, let your attention also go there and keep the focal point. See if you can keep this issue in the forefront of your awareness and let it appear to you and reveal to you what, if anything, it wants to, without expectation. Breath in and breath out at your own pace without holding your breath. We're going to let another minute or so go by where you keep your attention here gently with yourself. Be curious and childlike in your willingness to let something unfold for you, for yourself, consciously now. Breath in and breath out. If you lose any sense of what this issue is, bring back any of the memories, sounds, feelings, anything at all that will help you re-stimulate your awareness of what you are choosing to work on now. Breath in and breath out. If it's comfortable for you, let yourself exhale a little more fully so that your automatic inhale can also be a little more full. Focus more on just emptying the breath and then letting the breath come in. And keep tracking that which is somewhere in your own consciousness about this situation or issue. And in about 1 minute, we'll just slowly come back. But for now, just maintain your own focus. Now, see if you can just take a little more breath for yourself and search around with this thing, this issue or situation, or anything that occurred during this process, and just like a child, curiously examine, breathe, feel, breath in, breath out. And as you do that, in your own timing here, over the next maybe 20 seconds or so, see if you can just allow yourself to come back into conscious awareness of your being here, what the situation is inside of you, and you still have that, but you're going to open your eyes gradually. And then the kind of questions that I'll ask will not require, or not even ask, for any specifics. I just want to see, and I want other people to see with each other here, how this process works or proceeds. This is like a little mini thing. We're using only a few minutes. So what I'll ask is, does anybody want to say anything about, again, not your personal experience about what you're dealing with, but how was it for you when you agreed to let yourself go consciously to something, and even though we only took a few short minutes, you let it present itself to you, and you're facing your own thing inside of you, and you're breathing, and you're having a certain deal of curiosity. Now, does anybody have any comment at all about that? Anybody else? So I'll ask some other questions.
I want to say something.
Please.
Well, it's like when you first ask us to think of something that we want to work on, if it's a difficult thing, because sometimes it is if you want to work on it, then you're going to feel maybe angry or afraid or some kind of like overpowering negative emotion. But when you're breathing it and you're actually doing the exercise, just for me, I didn't feel so much.
Good.
That the feelings I have when I think of it with my consciousness.
Right. So you hit on two very important things, at least, maybe a couple more. When we do this, maybe I should have said at the beginning, the thing we want to do first is to give ourselves permission to know that only that which is manageable to us will be presented to us by our own internal highest level of inner wisdom inside us. That's why this isn't about talk therapy or somebody doing anything with it. You can always bring your work to a therapist, but if you know that it's safe for you because you make an agreement with yourself, it's not a bad idea. I even have like a little operating principle I will sometimes express in the beginning of this and then see if people agree with it. One thing I wasn't, when I created this, I was not at all partial to affirmations. I thought they were used too often as Band-Aids. So like the next night I wake up and I had to write out this thing. And at the time it went something like this: by the love, power, force, and will of my spirit, I use the term spirit instead of consciousness, I disconnect, forgive, complete, and release these limiting patterns, influences, behaviors, and beliefs, and I remove and replace them with the positive, loving qualities of my consciousness. So that meant that I'm drawing upon all of the energy of creation as it is within me, my highest inner level of wisdom, and I am letting go. A lot of our healing has to do with our letting go of our own grip, which is sometimes very unconscious, but it's very strong, on an issue, a situation, a person, a resentment is holding on. So when we forgive, when we let go of our grip, we can let that circulation, that healing take place. As you just said about, anger, this, anything, another way of working with this, another element that can be brought in is to say, and I sometimes do this when I'm doing, a longer session with people or a group or something, and say, look, when you come into contact with something, you might feel, if I asked you what is it, you might say anger, grief, sorrow, sadness, you'd have a term for it, right? So that's fine. All I ask you to do is slide that term over to the side. You can always get it back whenever you want it. But for that thing called anger or grief, I want you to let it show you how you identify it as anger, as opposed to sadness, as grief, as opposed to rage. So you have to be curious you have to be literally looking within, feeling within, listening within this thing, this anger I've got about so-and-so. Well, how do I know that? What happens? And you may feel, well, when I think about it, my head goes back and up, and there's this thing maybe here where a lot of emotion, feeling stuff is generated around the psyche. This is the core area for the psyche. So if it draws me, if I have a strong association to this term or this gestalt, this thing, and I feel it here, I'm not going to worry so much about the term. I'm curious about what is this. I'm just going to project some stuff because I've had this and other people I've worked with. Well, it's a dark, tight energy. Well, really like what? Well, it's kind of presses in here. Okay, so you're focusing there and just breathing and all what's happening. Well, it's funny. It's like it's opened out and it's not there anymore. Is it somewhere else? Well, some of it moved here. So we are being very discreet in our inner observation. That means we're fearless. When children are curious, they're not filled with fear. We have, through the years of our lives, how many years we've had traumas, disappointments, hurts, tragedies. And so we contract in different ways and in different places inside of us. When we are able to go and notice that and be curious rather than defend, close off, back away, be fearful of it, we notice it. It's like, I would tell people, remember the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain? He had a microphone and his voice is booming. They pulled the curtain back. This is a little guy. Oh. And, this is what happens to us. This is my own little theory about things like neurosis and all the rest. When we're very little, under the best of conditions, which have diminished rapidly in the current world, as infants, as babies, we're loved unconditionally. We feel nurtured and caring. We're floating around in bliss, right, if everything goes well. And then at a certain point, maybe we're 1 or 2 or 3, we're about to touch a hot stove or pick up a knife and stick it in our forehead, and somebody goes, no, don't do that. And suddenly we get an energy from this loving caregiver that just doesn't compute. We can't think, it seems like Aunt Edna wants to prevent me from sticking that knife in my forehead where my third eye should be. Thank you so much. We're not intellectualizing, we're in shock. And we contract inside ourselves. Now, depending on our experiences when we're little and as we grow up, certain experiences in life tend to give us shocks and even to reinforce, where what do? We start armoring ourselves, right? So we armor based on some of the earliest trauma. And again, I'm not talking about the terrible things that the world is filled with now, but under the best of circumstances. So that means that we're neurotic when an external or internal stimuli occurs that has nothing to do with the original assault on our sweet psyches, and we go into a habitual behavior. We tick, we twitch, we shut down, we tighten up, we cry. And this happens as we get older. People get into strange behaviors, and it's connected very often to things that happen when we're very young. We can, even while we're adults like this, we can connect in such a way that we get to see, it's like we finally are going, well, give me your best shot, because as the dreaded thing approaches us initially, sometimes we're still contracting, we're a little fearful, but we're breathing in and out, like you said, breath in, breath out. We realize instinctively as well as intellectually that this thing that has controlled us or troubled us doesn't have any more energy than what it's now brought to the table. We can literally say, give me your best shot. And the little guy behind the curtain can keep on going, boo. And we're going, suddenly we get to a place, this is interesting, this is curious. Oh, that's what it's about. Now, in 3 minutes or 4 minutes, we may not get there, but as I say, there's a DVD that shows you how to do this and if you grasp the idea, you can do it yourself. You can do it with a therapist, whatever. This is one of the ways of using the spiritual teaching to heal the inner stuff that has crippled us to whatever degree or inconvenienced us, locked us up, caused the hurts, the unforgivable and unforgiven, and the fears of intimacies and connections and openness, because we've got all this stuff. So when we are able genuinely to go, give me your best shot. I'm at the core, baby. What is it? You'll get things like, you'll start to feel, I believed that all this time, I'm unlovable. I'm not worthy. I should be ashamed of myself. No one will ever do this. I'll never do. Where did I pick that up? And then you can keep moving through layers where you got this message and where you got that message. And you can take a message, a negative message, like, I'll never amount to anything, whatever it is. And you can use the affirmation to find out where it makes you contract. You can use a positive affirmation that way. You can say, I'm a loving and prosperous person. Yeah, and then see what collapses in if you don't believe that. It's rich people don't have affirmations on their refrigerators. I'm a rich, prosperous person. They know it. They're onto something else. This is the thing about affirmations that I didn't like, whereas people are working so hard to affirm something they don't really own. So if there's something you keep affirming and you don't have it and you want to take the affirmation in the privacy of your own consciousness, you repeat it inwardly. You can even say it to yourself out loud because that has a certain vibratory effect. And then you wait for the resonance. Like you drop something, a pebble down a shaft. You're waiting to hear plop. When does it hit bottom? So then you might feel it in one area or another where there's a contraction. Then you go, it's like, wow, that's like finding gold, because you can go, oh, so when I say that, oh yeah, there it is. And then you remain curious, you keep breathing, you bring that affirmation back if it seems to disappear. You work with, where is that contraction? What is that? And very often we'll find that we've got places that are holding on for dear life inside, and everything else seems great, but we're locked up in somewhere. And then you have compassion for yourself. You go, okay, so what happens if I release this energy, dissipate the negative charge, and let the energy circulate in me again about something? And liberation takes place. And things happen in their own timing. Sometimes a person has carried a thing, even silently, or they've tried to deal with it, and then they're finally ready and they go to it. And bang, it's like I wrote a song 34 years ago. Carrying a heartache everywhere you go, feeling like somebody you don't even want to know. So you hide the hurt inside you where you think that it won't show, but the farther down you push it, the more the pain just grows. So forgive yourself. It's really not so bad to forgive yourself. It'll make you feel glad to forgive yourself for the wrong you think you've done. Forgive yourself and then forgive someone. Now, maybe you're a parent who couldn't show their love. Maybe you're a child who never got enough. Maybe someone left you and you don't want to live. Before love can come through, you've got someone to forgive. Forgive yourself. It's really not so bad to forgive yourself. It'll make you feel glad to forgive yourself for the wrong you think you've done. Forgive yourself and then forgive someone. Your loving heart has had its time to grieve. Forgive, forget, and let your spirit breathe. Forgive yourself. And then you're doing that for you, because no one can really do it for us. This is why this whole thing always comes back. Self-responsibility. See things for what they are. Neutral positive thinking. Control your thoughts. Embrace that which you might have been trying to push out of you. Let it be there, but look at it. Get curious. And then, like a frightened puppy or something, it starts to look up, and then it might stretch its body and stand up inside of you and smile and bark and run around and wag its tail and go somewhere else, whatever it is. This is what's beautiful about the spiritual teaching. And this is a little teeny thing. The elements of the self-responsible see things as, this gives you a theater in which to work any time you want, wherever you are. You can be sitting on a plane, you can be driving, you can be talking to someone. These things are, all these elements that are within us are like field aspects for exploration, if we choose to do it. Some things we may not feel are that important. You can let some things go. Okay, I always do this thing, but it's not a big deal.
Hey, can you say a word about the, I heard you mention the third eye.
Oh, well, people speak about the third eye. I used to have a contact lens I kept in it. That was when my Kundalini wouldn't rise, my chakras were shut down, and I had the New Age blues. But the third eye is simply refers to usually the area behind that's the pineal gland, and back centered deep in the center of the brain is where the spirit actually is located. This is a focal point for meditation for many people and all that stuff. There's not a lot, we could talk about, well, is your pineal gland calcified? Don't worry about it. Through the exercise of your deliberate consciousness, your practice with any and all of these things that you feel more drawn to than others, because there's a lot, you go, oh, I like this particular affirmation, or I like that particular technique or something. We evolve. We do it for ourselves.
Do you know if it's a place in your own self that you can go to and participate, or I don't know what the word is. I mean, with something that's taking place there. If it's a center, like you say, where the spirit comes in, or
the spirit is located already there. We cannot perceive the spirit. We can't do anything with it. Think of it more like this battery of energy. As far as we're concerned, it enlivens the whole body. When the spirit leaves the body, the person has died. There's no coming back. So-called near-death experiences are not really death. It is the consciousness gets a little oxygen starved and things happen, and people can have a sense of seeing themselves from above because an aspect of their consciousness can look down. But we don't leave our bodies. When we leave our bodies, we're done. So this isn't too much to be made out of this at this point. There's information on the website. You can read about the pineal gland and all this stuff. It's more about create your own intention. If it's to find out more about the pineal gland and focus there, that's fine. That interests you the most, whatever it is. I'm just suggesting that with things like this type of work, where we can know that if something has been a problem, if we've carried something within us for a long time, we never seem to get resolution, we feel a bit trapped or handicapped or tripped up by something that sabotages us, that's just an element of our behavior, whatever, why won't we? First, we have to know it's safe. I'm not going to get overwhelmed by something. Suddenly I'm not going to get overcome with, you're a guilty bad person and I am me telling myself that, we're not going to do ourselves in once we authorize ourselves to do this type of work, internal awareness work, okay, consciousness awareness. And then we only really get that which we can handle. Some people will do a session and say, I didn't get anything. I said, well, that's fine. Well, but aren't I supposed to get no? Because sometimes you won't get anything. Just the fact that you're willing to stand there and be with yourself or sit there and be inward and quiet, that might be what you needed to get then. I'll tell you a story. Quick one, I hope. Years ago, shortly after I created all this stuff, I knew a woman who was a psychotherapist. I didn't know her real well. We were just acquaintances through someone else. This was in Venice, California. And I told her one day, we were taking a walk, and I said, I created this process because after I did it for myself for a couple of weeks, I started to do it with people who would do it, and I did it on a couple of psychotherapists for their feedback, and they loved it. Oh, this is great, big breakthrough. Okay, fine. And I got taken to Europe by a consultant for the late Princess Diana to teach this to business and governmental people in Europe, in groups and stuff. So we took more time. You guys have been here for hours, and I don't want you to just sweat away, but you've gotten a sense of what this is about. So I said to this woman, I did this process, and are you interested? No, that's okay. So she tells me, she says, I want to tell you more about what I've done. One day we get in a conversation, and she said, I belonged to a spiritual group here in Los Angeles. And she mentioned, the guy was called Rama. Probably nobody knows, but a white guy, had a big afro. Frederick Lenz was his name or something. And she said, and we had a big house and everybody would meet at, and one day he called me up to say, come on over, I need you to help me do some work with the stuff, and blah, blah, blah. And I came over and he said, well, let's go upstairs and I'll bring out the papers or whatever. She said, so we went up to his room and he opened the door and he walked in, he says, and he went over to a desk drawer and he pulled out a gun and he raped me at gunpoint. I'm going, oh, God. I said, I got this process. She said, that's okay. So about a week or two later, we're taking a walk, and she said, that process you've got, would you be willing to do it with me? I said, well, sure, of course. So she lived in this tiny little place in Venice that literally, it's like from that table, across to there to here, and full of furniture. It was just nothing. You couldn't move it. So I said, well, can you do this standing? Is it okay? And she said, yeah, I'll do it standing. So we're standing, and it ends up literally, she's standing about as close as this microphone is. And she's standing there with her eyes closed, and we're doing this process, and tears start to stream down her face, and I'm not asking her I just try to, how are you doing? Still with that? And I'm a little voice to keep you here. And when we're done with it, and she's wiping her eyes, and I said, you don't have to tell me what you were doing. I said, I have a feeling that I might know, but the thing that really struck me, because we started to talk, I said, we don't know each other all that well. You told me what happened to you at gunpoint with this guy that you knew and trusted. And here you are with your eyes closed in this teeny little place with me for 30, 40 minutes going through this thing, and you had enough trust in yourself to do this with someone who was almost a stranger in terms of real depth of relationship. I said, that's really neat. So the other neat experience, I had a whole bunch of people that would come and do this. So one guy calls me up because I had flyers put up around LA, and this guy says, I'm interested in doing this thing here. You got an older guy. So I said, fine, we book an appointment one day, and there's a doorbell rings or he knocks or whatever. And I go to the door, I open the door, and I go, holy cow, this big guy standing there, big old, I learned he was 72, and he's standing there like ramrod straight, and he's looking down at me with a funny look in his face, like, what's going on here? And I'm trying to invite him in, and he keeps asking me questions and check stuff out, and finally he decides he'll come in. I can tell right away I'm not what he expected to see, right? As he told me later, well, you weren't what I expected to see. You didn't have a white coat on, and it's not a doctor's office or anything. He was coming to work on his hip. He said to me, can you work on a hip? I said, well, you can try it. So I said, okay, we do this, generally we do it standing, and anytime you need to sit down, I don't want you to keel over, just sit down. So we're no more than about 10 minutes into this thing. This guy's standing there, his eyes closed, talking him through the process, going through steps. He says to me, can I sit down? I said, yes, of course. So he sits down, I had a couch against the wall, It's like a condor. This guy's arms went from wall to wall. Big guy, stretches out, sits back, and is looking at me. I said, how are you? You okay? He said, yeah, I'm fine. I said, how's your hip? Hip. Doesn't matter. I'm fine. I said, what happened? He says, it's my mother. I said, your hip? No. It's my mother. She never loved me. I didn't know it until now. Yeah, I came here. You didn't look like any kind of doctor, and I didn't know if I'd come in, and I'm standing there, and you're talking at me, and suddenly I just realized it's my mother. She never loved. I'm going, yeah, right. Is there anything else I can do? Would you want to book it? No, that's just fine. I needed to know that. What do I owe you? And it was like, I didn't expect. I didn't know, because everybody is unique, right? Everybody's got whatever it is they want to work on. There were people that came to work on big emotional issues and lots of tears. One guy, or it was a woman, came with a whiplash. She was wearing a collar. Can you work with a whiplash? I said, well, it's up to you. By the time she was done with herself, she took the collar off and she said, yeah, that's better. Because it's the person themselves that make an agreement with themselves as to what the heck they're going to do. How far am I going to go now? And it's not about forcing, it's not about healing everything. It's about let's regain trust, self-responsibility, get curious about what this thing, my being is, and see what I can do. Now, earlier I said there are ways to use information from your past life. Well, how if you don't really remember your past life or lives? So this is a little connected, that's why I'm bringing it up here. There's something called the storage banks. We mentioned that, where everything that every person who's ever lived has said, done, felt, and all is stored, like in an etheric computer. There's also something called the comprehensive consciousness block and the personal. There's these terms in this case about things that we really don't have real reference points for in Western terms. Even in esoteric Eastern terms, we might have the idea of an Akashic record, but this is more. So, everything's stored. Now, we go to the idea of the might of the thoughts, because everything we create in life starts with our thoughts, moves to our feelings, then we have another thought, we do something or don't do something, and so it goes endlessly in each lifetime. In each lifetime, we reach varying levels, varying degrees of experience or expertise even, knowledge or wisdom in different areas. Now, considering the information in this case tells us that the average human being on earth is enlivened by a spirit that's already maybe 1, 2, 3, or more million years old, has been reincarnating in different personalities for thousands upon thousands of years. And we don't remember those lifetimes, fortunately. Who wants to remember being mauled by a tiger or being so madly in love with somebody that is no longer available to us? So there's reasons we can't just tap into that stuff at this level of development. But take an idea like, in this life I'm working in this particular field or career, and these abilities are necessary for this. So we use the might of the thoughts in this way. I consciously draw unto myself that which from any and all previous personalities was a level of experience, expertise, knowledge, or wisdom in this area that I can draw to enhance my current abilities. So your intention, I'm just using language right now, you can do it your own way. When we are affirming, we know what we're intending. If you're a doctor, if you're an investigator, if you're, an IT person, anything, in the past, through other incarcerations or incarnations, we have had experience, we've gained knowledge, it's all stored. It's stored. So we're calling upon it to come and be available to us to support and augment our consciousness, our development in our life now. Once we feel comfortable and we are affirming that, we might do it in a number of different ways and many times. It's always our responsibility, once we've put out a cause, to pay attention to what comes our way, internally, externally. Some things show up so fast in life, whoa, I just was asking for that. Other things, we just get a passing hint of something, but we follow it. Or it takes more time, whatever. Yes?
I don't mean to distract you from your flow of thought, but I was wondering at the beginning you mentioned that the point of it all is to get to, and there's a big display up there, the word truth. And I was wondering if you could maybe tell us the truth that is in this, like in a 60-second summary.
Ooh, that's a good challenge. Well, part of it is this. And again, this has to be determined and assessed by each individual themselves through their own work and investigation. Some of the truth in here is this. We are living in spirited human beings, all of whom bear within ourselves a piece of the universal energy that is the creator and sustainer of all that exists in this creation, in this universe. And that through countless incarnations as personalities and reincarnations of the spirit, the evolution of our consciousness and then of our spiritual development brings us to a place finally where we move not in a physically embodied form, but in a spiritual, energetic form, immaterial form ultimately, into the beginning levels of the spiritual realms, the true spiritual realms, to begin the evolutionary process in there. This whole thing, from soup to nuts, so to speak, being incarnated in physical bodies, and then eventually to re-merge with the creation that birthed that which we truly are. Again, we're using these reference points. That's a multi-billions of years process. Now, certainly it's very appropriate to say this is presented as information because we can't sit here and prove the existence of the human spirit, though we could have discussions that could lead us to certain conclusions. So it's not to be believed so much as one chooses whether or not they want to study, test, apply the teaching to see what happens inside of each of us, in our consciousnesses, in our lives, in real terms, in the material sense, in the immaterial or fine matter, finer consciousness levels inside of us. That other truths pertain to the fact that we are not alone in this universe. It's a big part of this. That there are literally billions of other races spread throughout creation. Hundreds of different configurations of the human form, intelligent forms that are not human, evolving plant and even animal forms, things that are presented here simply as information in the case that we work with. But to find truth in terms of the truth of the sovereignty of our own being, of the responsibility we have for everything we think, we feel, we do, how we relate to each other and to ourselves in our lives. Those things are expressed in the spiritual teaching as truths. There are results that we are told we will have when we conduct ourselves in certain ways, but we still have to find out for ourselves in the process if those are the truths.
Are those solutions to the coming global disasters?
In the sense they are, because here's the good news, and we wait for the last part for this shoe to drop. In all this material, in the prophecies, in this material, we're told that in about 800 years, we're going to go kicking and screaming through a lot of stuff. In about 800 years, the human race has survived and evolved to a mass of humanity on this world that lives in accordance with higher principles of truth, love, peace, freedom, harmony, wisdom, compassion, fellowship, practices that we will have healed the damage to the planet that we have done and still are going to do, and damage to our species. It will bring many changes and mutate different things, but we will have this time when the mothers, the true mothers of the millennium, come into their fulfillment of power, and human beings on earth have balanced the male, the female. We haven't lost our, fighting spirit to pursue things, striving. We must always strive. Billy makes, it's very important. One of the books, he has a whole chapter on the importance of striving. Without striving, there's no life. Without life, there's no striving. We constantly must strive for these things in our life that are important to us, and everybody makes their own determinations, but they tend to be consciousness related, love, transformation of the situations. There's going to be, there has been in the past through tremendous global destruction. We've got a new breed of it coming in a world that we happen to be here for now. And we have people caring enough to do what they could to warn us, to give us a peace meditation to do, to help individually and collectively to harmonize these vibrations and influences on Earth. And so this helps us to proceed fearlessly, without fear. But knowing, okay, there can be things that personally, we're not immune from consequences. Things can fall on our heads anywhere or break down or whatever. But we now have a greater understanding. As we work this stuff to make the understanding our own, we have a greater sense and understanding of a part of life that is immortal, that we're a part of. Not always is this personality, that person, but somehow we've never not known existence. Think about it. I don't remember my past lives. Yeah, but have you ever not known life? No. And it will be in coming lifetimes as well. While you won't remember this one, and because you're hearing about this information and you'll dip into it to whatever degree, you'll find it again in subsequent incarnations. That's an important thing. I want to wrap it up because, if there's any real specific question that didn't seem to get clarified enough, in a moment I'll ask. But basically, we could go on forever, and that's not to anybody's real service here. You really now have an introduction to this material, from the craft to the prophecies to the really important stuff, which is the spiritual teaching, and how when you get into the plenty of free material on my website, when you get into the books from Meier, you realize that we've had a little drop in the bucket here. And that's good, because now we have something to think about and work with if we want. Does anybody have a specific question related to this at this time? Yes, sir.
You mentioned races 3 times. Is there more than one race on this planet right now?
You mean like extraterrestrial race?
Anything other than sapiens?
Well, we have the surface dwellers here. That's all the human beings on Earth, different races, and many of the races had different origins. Some races always arise naturally on a planet when the planet is ready, evolutionary-wise, to have human life start to appear. There is, according to this information, there is a subterranean race, probably more under the area of India, Tibet, Gobi Desert, descendants of extraterrestrials who were here long ago. They have very advanced technology. They want nothing to do with the crazy people on the surface. They may, however, come into play a little later on if certain things occur on Earth, because they could also affect them. But they have craft that can pass through the Earth and then rematerialize, go out of dimension. And their craft have been seen too among those craft. But they're not interacting with anybody except Meier has seen them before. There are a couple people who did interact with the monk in India at the ashram. He saw them speaking with the monk there, and then he said they simply disappeared. They were gone.
I came across this site. There's plenty of information, as anybody knows, but it was all about the Sasquatch
Right.
and the star people.
Those may be two different things, because while there's a lot of information that people put out tied into the Sasquatch and so-called star people, at least according to the information in this case, the Sasquatch, they are real, the Yeti, they're real beings. They are kind of hybrids between, I think, Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, something. They were kind of, bridging race. They live...
They had a conversation with one, and they took notes, and he explained all this stuff about the interplanetary travel and where they came from.
Yeah, but again, we don't have evidence to test that. We can say, I've seen film taken by this guy, Kawani Lapsaritis, up in Washington State, of a number of...
Yeah, that's the one.
Right. You could see, it was broad daylight, there were some fences, one or two jumped over a fence, one came up close to the camera. It isn't fur, they have long hair, actually, all over the body. And I was amazed. It was really amazing to see these guys running around up there. And that way, I saw that about 10, 12 years ago. But the claims that people make about, telepathic communication and star travelers, I don't have evidence of that. I know that having seen the film, but I always had a sense there must be something to this. And the player have said to Meier, oh yeah. They showed Meier also Nessie, in the loch in Scotland there, Loch Ness Monster, so-called. It is a plesiosaur, apparently. And there may be, as I think was said here, that there might be one in the lake here. But also there still are some dinosaurs, I think deep in the Congo. There's still some primitive life forms there. There's a lot of stuff we don't know. Meier was taken deep into the oceans where they showed him creatures we've never seen that exist way down. Occasionally, some of these pop up and get washed up on the shore, and huge things and colorful things. And they showed him so much stuff and explained so much. That's why this material... If you go to my website and you follow links to other translations and prophecies and predictions and spiritual teaching, you're going to just see that there's so much amazing information. And it's nourishing because it can make a place in us where we can think about these truly important issues, whichever they are to us, and evolve the thinking. And it is through the might of the thoughts, the way to live, the spiritual teaching, that we walk around not fearful. We know things are happening, some are coming, but we then find more and more like-minded people who want to be interconnected and intercooperative, right? Cooperative, interdependent, and that's fine. Some people know about this, some don't, but we can be open to more. I have a friend, I just have to say this one last thing. I've got a friend where I live, he's 55 years old, he's a lifelong Mormon. We couldn't have come from, he even says to me, how come we can sit out here on this bench? He's got beautiful property, we sit and watch the grass grow. How can we sit here and just get along with each other so well and talk? I said, it's like this. He says, we come from such different, he knows that I'm not religious. I said, cosmologies, right? Yeah, cosmology. I said, here's your cosmology, here's my cosmology. Very different, except when you overlap them right in the center, that's where our values overlap. Love, family, peace, harmony, service to the community. We agree on that. So we focus on the values, Not political parties, not religions and all that. We focus on the values. And he says, well, you know, there's really nothing I disagree with about what Billy Meier said. I said, well, that's great. I said, but we don't try to force each other to convert, to think and agree. But he, every now and then he turned to me and he says, well, what did Meier say about this? Or what did Meier say about that? Because he gets that even though it's not part of his really lifelong belief system, he gets that there's something authentic there and he wants to benefit from it. So we don't all have to study the same thing, but if we can just overlap on values, and those that want to immerse in this, I don't know of a better teaching on the planet. You find out for yourself, right? So I thank everybody who's endured here with us 4 hours. And I have cards over there if people are interested. I've got a couple books online. We've got books and DVDs and tons of free info. So thank you for coming, and we hope to see you again. My pleasure.